None of the ancient cultures that were able to calculate cycles of time with such incredible precision had the powerful telescopes and computers available to modern-day astronomers. Instead, they used naked eye observations of the stars above over multiple lifetimes to record and chart changes in the heavens and eventually to plot full cycles of time.
The precession of the equinoxes is the astronomical process that underlies the Mayan calendar and all ancient systems of cyclical time. And perhaps I should just say a word about what the precession of the equinoxes is. Precession fundamentally is an observation of the heavens, and an observation that at certain seasons of the year, particular markers, the equinoxes and the solstices, if you look at the background of stars behind the sun, you'll find that that background is very, very slowly changing. And it's changing at the rate of 1 degree every 72 years. And the view of mainstream astronomers as to why this is happening is they hypothesize, they have not proved, that there is a cyclical wobble on the axis of the Earth, rather like the wobble of a top that has been spinning fast, but its spin has begun to decay, and the poles of the top begin to make a great circle. And this is what they believe is happening with the Earth. Now, because the Earth is the viewing platform from which we observe the stars, changes in orientation of that viewing platform will cause changes in the observed appearance and positions of the stars in the sky at particular times of year. And because it's a circular wobble, the whole thing is a cycle, and in fact unfolds over a vast span of time. 25,920 years takes you back from the starting position of the clock, back fully around the clock to the same position again. So the constellation that is rising behind the sun today in our time, and for a period of roughly 2,000 years, which we're just entering into the age of Aquarius, when the constellation of Aquarius houses the sun, it will be 26,000 years, 25,920 years before that constellation again rises behind the sun.
Ancient astrology in the Western world recognizes that there is this great cycle caused by the wobble of the Earth on its axis, and one complete wobble is 26,000 years. In the Greco-Hellenistic period, there were astrological ideas about how the sun shifts through the 12 signs of the zodiac. So you could divide the 26,000 year period into 12 periods, or 12 ages, or chapters. And this idea is a fairly profound idea. It's referred to as the world age doctrine. We can notice that in the Old Testament period there was an obsession with the age of Aries in symbolism around the lamb. And at the dawn of the Christian period there became an obsession with fish symbolism. And that would indicate our shift into the age of Pisces. Now in the Western astrological tradition, we are about to move out of the sign of Pisces. So there's great talk about the shifting of the age right now. We're basically at the cusp of the age of Aquarius. So this astrological doctrine has to do with our changing angular orientation to the larger cosmos.
The belief of many ancient cultures around the world that the precession of the equinoxes maps out changes and cycles of human consciousness has led some researchers to believe that the ancients may have understood the causes and effects of precession in a markedly different way than the generally accepted wobble theory presented by modern scientists. Walter Cruttenden of the Binary Research Institute looked back to the mythology of many of these cultures and posits a very different understanding of precession.
Our research has focused on why are so many ancient cultures fascinated with this obtuse thing called precession of the equinox, when it takes one a full lifetime just to notice that the stars have moved 1 degree. There's 200 plus myths that talk about this movement of the stars causes some change in the history of the Earth. And it just seemed that if it is only what modern scholars say it is, just a simple wobbling of the Earth, that it shouldn't be related to any change in history or consciousness. And so we really dug into the Vedic teachings about precession, which give us a whole different meaning. We believe that the Earth moving with the sun, the whole solar system going around another star, we believe is the cause of why we see this precession of the 12 constellations of the zodiac.
Cruttenden's Binary Research Institute proposes that our solar system is in fact part of a binary star system, where our sun is locked in a never-ending cosmic tango with a second sun, each revolving around the other in repeating elliptical orbits lasting 24,000 years.
We know that all orbits conform to Kepler's laws. They move in great ellipses rather than circles. And that means the bodies speed up when the two masses get closer to each other, when the gravitation is stronger, and then they slow down when they get farther away from each other. So if precession is the observable of a solar system in motion around another star, it too would have to obey Kepler's laws and speed up and slow down. Now we have really, really good scientific data for the last 100 years, going back to at least the great Simon Newcomb, the #1 astronomer in the US, year 1900. And he kept precise records of precession and noticed that it's speeding up every year exponentially. So he actually added something called a constant to the precession equation. Newcomb's constant, we call it nowadays. And even since then, the precession rate has sped up above the constant rate. But we've taken the Vedic view that it's caused by an orbit. That orbit is 24,000 years, and therefore, if precession actually measures 26, we must be in the slow part of the orbit, far from the other star right now. And so we plotted on a curve what should the precession rate be over this last 100 years, and we came out with the exact curve that we see historically. And from that, we're able to predict that the precession rate will continue to accelerate year after year after year until we reach a periapsis.
Periapsis is the point in their elliptical orbit where our sun and its twin are closest together, marking a golden age here on Earth. For now, however, Cruttenden's theory remains a controversial attempt to explain the universal ancient beliefs and cycles of time being dictated by our progression through the signs of the zodiac that comprise the precession of the equinoxes.
Regardless of what causes the process, the fact is that the process occurs. And it is just possible to become aware of it in 1 or 2 human lifetimes. But it seems that passed down to us from deep antiquity, and the Maya were one of the vehicles or channels to pass this knowledge down, was a knowledge of precession of the equinoxes and a very accurate knowledge of the rate at which it unfolds. I would say a knowledge of a scientific level of accuracy, and that this is encoded and expressed in ancient myths all around the world, and is specifically encoded and expressed in the Mayan calendar. So, if there was a golden age in the past, then the ancient system of ideas would suggest that a full cycle of precession, a full cycle of almost 26,000 years, would bring us back to that golden age again. And they always saw a correspondence between sky and ground, so that what happens on Earth is connected to what happens in the heavens. And yes, what goes around comes around. And we are going through a great cycle of time, and we find ourselves placed in a particular position on that cycle of time, which in the Mayan system is very near the end of a whole age of the world and the beginning of the next.
I think what's interesting is this 26,000 year period can get neatly broken down into periods about 2,000 years long, in fact, make it 2,200 to be exact, which mark the passage of the vernal equinox, place of the sun in the vernal equinox, through successive constellations of the zodiac. 2,200 times 12 is about equal to the cycle of precession. And this has led many, many people to assume, with little evidence, that world ages, which are a Judeo-Christian phenomenon, connote divisions of the cycle of the precession of the equinoxes. So we all have heard of the age of Aquarius. Of course, that doesn't happen until 2700 AD. Be that as it may, the sun is about to enter Aquarius in some hundreds of years. And according to the Judeo-Christian myth, this is a world-changing phenomenon. So one could say that the ages of man are star-fixed, according to this philosophy. That's the connection, if it be one, between precession and cycles of renovation.
The modern astronomical understanding of precession is pretty straightforward. You know, it's kind of a mechanical understanding of how it works and how it affects the position of the sun on the equinox or the solstice. It shifts through the zodiac signs and so on. I think that there's it's kind of a literal way to interpret what precession is. But there's also a metaphorical or a symbolic understanding that gets more into how human beings are affected, perhaps, how the planet is affected by the precessional changes. We might envision that over this great 26,000-year period, there's seasons, in the same way that the year cycle has seasons. So there's, you know, summer, fall, winter, spring. And I think this is kind of an insight into this larger cycle and how it actually does affect Earth phenomenon, including life on Earth.
Cultures all around the world believed that this great year, this cycle, this one eon was broken into seasons, just like our yearly motion. You know, we have spring, summer, fall, and winter. Well, they broke it into the easiest ones to understand are the Greek terms, the Iron, Bronze, Silver, and Golden Age. That's sort of equivalent to summer in terms of consciousness, and then you go back down again. And each of these ages has different characteristics. And the Vedic teachers would tell us that we're just coming out of the Kali Yuga, very early into the Dwapara Yuga, which is equivalent of iron to bronze. And we're beginning to realize that we're no longer just physical bodies on a hard physical earth, that we are energy, and everything's made of energy. And consciousness keeps growing. We use more and more of our consciousness. We live longer and longer. Things become seemingly transparent to us, not because matter changes, but because we just see the potential and possibility in everything.
If you have a culture that observes the sky, for whatever reason, religious or scientific, they're bound to notice over 2 or 3 generations that the position of stars change. So the awareness of precession is almost certainly known by all ancient cultures. They saw it. Now, okay, they could work out the cycle. Let's say they could. But did they know how the stars change? Because it's not only their position that change, it's their tilt. So Orion would tilt and then retilt back and tilt. Well, again, it was observable. And they could work out the rate, and they found out it was also 26,000 years. And it appears to me that there came a moment when they thought they understood what they called the cosmic law. And then they followed it with the monuments, the alignments, the temples, the rituals.